We've become very accustomed to this arc of public opinion that greets every new technological innovation. We all expect new technologies to be swept upward on a wave of emotion, only to fall to earth when the hype wears off. By reducing innovation to a stereotype, we lose the opportunity to see new ideas that each innovation might bring. Hi, this is David Allen Greer for the Errant hashtag. Today's title has nothing to do with the hype cycle. It's called the Post-MOOC world. If you want an example of the hype cycle, one that occurred recently, we only need look back 1 or 2 years to see the arc that hit massive open online courses, or MOOCs. They emerged in 2011 as the great disruptive technology of higher education. That fall, some of you may remember, Stanford University offered the now famous MOOC on artificial intelligence that attracted 160,000 students. Within the year, many universities announced plans for MOOCs, and more than a few university trustees panicked and criticized their presidents for not embracing the new technology quickly enough. But just 3 short years later, most schools had fallen out of love with MOOCs. They had restricted their plans for the new technology or even abandoned the model entirely. Detractors quickly noted that these courses had low completion rates and an incredibly high cost of production. The successful providers, and there are a few, the companies such as Udacity, edX, Coursera, and the universities that are partnering with them, tended to focus on those large, relatively standardized and organized courses that have become central parts of the university curricula. Administrators began to claim that MOOCs might gain some publicity for the school and might do some good in preparing students for class, but they acknowledged that they might not transform higher education. Well, having been swept up now in that cycle of hype and decline, we've missed a tremendous opportunity to think deeply about how we learn, about how we transmit ideas from one generation to the next, about how we discipline our own thoughts to meet the challenges of our times. Much of the discussion of MOOCs treated computing technology merely as a tool of mass distribution, a simple way of storing great thoughts and then circulating them to ever wider audiences. If you remember the Stanford University MOOC, that had some of the great experts on artificial intelligence teaching it. There's perhaps no wonder that 160,000 students wanted to take it. But this isn't a particularly innovative idea. It differs little from ideas that were promoted in the 1950s when computers first emerged as a force in higher education. You want an example? 1955, the businessman Roger Babson, who was the founder of Babson College and the promoter of the Babson Anti-Gravity Research Institute. He proposed capturing great thinkers' ideas, putting them in a computerized form, and then distributing them to classes with the age of a computer. The results should be more effective than the present human touch idea, he wrote. He concluded by stating that we have been misled to believe that we must have a visible human teacher. His vision was not particularly well-founded, and it truly failed to transform any aspect of higher education during his time, just as his Anti-Gravity Research Institute has done little to teach us much about physics. In the same way, we're also moving into a post-MOOC world, not because we've learned anything new about education from MOOCs, but because of the economics of this massive mode of learning. A few researchers are, of course, using computing technology to observe how students interact with instructional material, in the hopes of getting some kind of a clearer understanding of the educational process. I saw a recent MIT study that tracked keystrokes of students who were watching instructional video. For the most part, the study yielded little new information. Yet, there were at least 2 major patterns in the keystrokes, and one of these patterns should have provoked deeper, more conscientious analysis. The first group was about 60% of these strokes. They were associated with the obvious changes in the videos and could be explained by very conventional stories. The keystrokes identified activities such as when students realized the subject has changed and they had not learned the old topic, or that they knew this material and they could safely jump ahead. The second group represented the remaining 40% of the keystrokes, and these did not match obvious changes in the video, and thus they didn't lead to obvious conclusions, though they suggested the process of a mind at work, a mind that is starting to break away from the narrative arc of the video and build a narrative of its own. Such an action should give us a much deeper understanding of the learning process than the data that matches the pattern of changing slides, of changing scenes, of changing narrative. The cycles of hype and decline, of stimulation and repose, aren't limited to the desires of enthusiastic investors or the unfettered imagination of journalists. They're part of the learning process itself. We might get excited about the promise of a new idea, just as we can be disappointed by that same idea when it finally comes to fruition in only the most modest of ways. The real test of education is found not in how we follow others, but in how we get a richer view of the world from the process. This is David Allen Greer for the Errant hashtag. Take care.